Hey everyone, so I found this tweet on codepin.io and it's about this glowy hover effect. I'm just gonna show you. So there's this pricing page, and when you hover your mouse over the elements, you can see there will be some kind of highlighting spotlight effect. Yeah, he actually linked the source code for this, which I will link in the description. Yeah, it's pretty cool. When I saw this, I thought, okay, let's try to build this. So this is written in just pure JavaScript, and I thought, okay, let's maybe make it more applicable in React and Tailwind projects. You will be able to use this yourself in your projects. Let's dive into it. I'm gonna install NextJs and set all the things up. I'm just gonna show you how it's done, and you can skip this if you already know. Copy their one-liner, paste it in. So I'm just gonna put a dot here on the end because I wanted to install directly in the directory that I'm already in. If you don't have the dot, then it will create a new directory for you. I don't want to do that. So I put the dot in it. I would like to use TypeScript. I don't care about ESLint for now. Tailwind, you need that for this project. And all the other ones doesn't matter. I'm gonna say no to app router. All right, so it's gonna install all the packages. All right, let's open it in VS Code and let's just run it. Let's see if it works. Cool. All right, it works. So before we start diving into the code, I'm just gonna explain 3 different parts. The first part is we're just gonna build the content and have something to play around with. Then after we build the content, we're gonna add a twin, meaning we're just gonna basically copy and paste what we've done. And I'm gonna explain later why we do that. But we need 2 copies of the content. And then lastly, we need to add some reactivity to the page, meaning whenever we move our mouse around, things needs to happen on the screen, basically. In order for us to get this glowing effect, we need to have some JavaScript that tracks where our mouse is and then translate the position of the mouse into this effect here. So that's the last part. So in order to build this effect here, it's actually quite simple. We need to have some content, and then on top of that, we need to have an invisible twin, kind of like this. By default, the twin will be invisible, but like in certain areas where the mouse is, that's where it will actually show. So I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, I think it makes more sense if we dive into it with code. Let's copy in some code. So let's remove everything that we have, and then let's replace it with some code that I've already written in advance. And you can find this code down below if you want to follow along. So what we have here is just the basic elements of the pricing page. I've written, or I have actually not written, I've copied the content from the original source code, just pasted it in here. So I'll try to follow the structure that was used in the code pin. So we have the main, and it's actually just the main content here, which wraps around the whole thing. And then we have a header, which is just the pricing, doesn't do anything. And then we have the container. The container here is the important part because in this container, we will have the main cards, and then we will also have the twin cards. So it's important that the position is relative because we need to use an absolute positioning to style the twin cards when we get there. Cool. So in the main cards div, I've used the display flex attribute and then the flex wrap. Flex wrap just means that if the elements they overflow, meaning that their width are too broad, it will wrap around. So I'm not sure. Yeah. So for example, now if I scroll too far, zoom in too much, there's not enough space for the ultimate price, hence it will go down. Cool. So I've also put a little bit of CSS styling to this. I've given it a border and then some text colors. So I put in this transition colors Tailwind helper, you could call it. But basically it just animates whenever the background color changes. That is super useful because when you hover over any of the cards, you can see that the background color, it actually lights up. Let's just implement that. Hover, BG, and so I've used this color here. I think we can just light it up just a little bit. Maybe like that. Does that look? Okay, that looks good. So let's copy that. Cool. All right, so good so far. So now we have the content ready. We need to make the invisible twin. The invisible twin needs to sit on top of it, and it needs to have the appropriate styling that we want. Yeah, in order to have that nice look. Let's create the twin cards elements. It is as it sounds. You take the main cards and then you just paste that in here. Now we have a copy essentially of our initial pricings, and we need to add some stylings to it. After we added some stylings, we will then put it on top and then finally add some reactivity to it. So what we want to do is we just want to strip it everything. So essentially we just want to use it as an outline for our original components. So we actually don't need the text, for example. So we can start by hiding the text by making it transparent. Let's see here. Okay, so I've removed all the text. So after making the text transparent, we should also ensure that we're not able to highlight it like this. So essentially we want to remove all interactivity with the twin. Essentially it's a twin overlay because we're going to put this on top. So for example, we can say select none, then we can say binder events none. Cool. So now it's completely ignoring everything we do. Beautiful. So that was the first thing. Now we need to add some styling. So essentially we're gonna have some overlay. This overlay will be shown when we hover our mouse over it. So we actually have to remove the hover effect. So we don't need that on this level. And then we can add whatever color we want. For example, if we wanna see if we can, maybe we can steal the colors from here. Okay, let's do it like this. Okay, so a bright clean here, bright green, and then let's see, let's just do the same color on all. Cool. So I've just added this bright green color on all of these. And I think I want to tone it down just a little bit. Let's see, where is it? Maybe this is fine. Let's put that. Cool, because I also want it on the buttons. Cool, and I want that to be a little bit brighter for the call to action. So now we got the colors. Let's see, do I also want to do something about the border? Yeah, why not? Let's also add an effect on the border. And let's just scale that up all the way up. Okay, cool. So now we need to put the overlay, put the twin on top of the original elements. So we can do that by making this absolute and then set the inset to 0. So now it's on top of our elements and it will stay on top no matter what we do, because the twin container has all of the same attributes in terms of responsiveness, right? So it will behave in the same way, essentially. And because it's inside a relative container, it will move when that relative container moves. So for example, you can use this, make a component out of this and use it somewhere else without having any side effects Cool. So now let's just quickly revisit our Xcali draw. We built the content, we added the twin. Now we need to add the reactivity to it. So in here, we need to do some JavaScript. So I'm just going to copy and then I will explain it. It is super simple. So on top of our React page, we need to refer to our cart container. So we need to refer to this relative container here. So just add a ref to this carts container. And so now we'll refer to this element. And I'm going to tell you later, I'm going to show you later, actually right now, why we need to do that. I told you we need to add something, or do something whenever our cursor moves. So of course we need to add an event listener. So the easiest way to do this is by a use effect. So a use effect will only trigger when the page is rendered. So this will not throw an error. Like if you have an event listener outside of your use effect, it will give an error on the first render. Whenever our mouse moves, our page will catch that. So for example, I can just log log e dot offset x offset y. And so if I log this, you can see every time our cursor moves, it'll know and it will log out the positions. Cool. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and add this function called apply overlay mask. So I'm just going to write it out and implement the function const apply overlay mask. It takes in a pointer element, a pointer event, and from this pointer event, we save the current target. This will actually be the document target e dot current target. Let's just type it out as an element, and then we need to check that the cart container exists. If cart container dot current does not exist, so we need to figure out where our cursor position is on the overlay. And the problem with just getting the mouse position directly is that it will tell us the mouse position on the page, and we need to know the position relative to the cart container. And so we need to subtract the position of the cursor relative to the page minus the position of the container relative to the page. And then we get the mouse position relative to the cart container. So how does that look like? The x coordinates, we get that from taking e.page x. So the mouse position relative to page. Cool. And then we do the same thing, of course, for the top. Cool. And if I now console.log this, x, y, and just refresh the page real quick, you can now see it prints out my mouse cursor relative to this one here. I'm not sure. Is there any way I can keep seeing this? Probably not. But if I take my mouse to the corner, you should be able to see approximately 0, 0, meaning that we are at the start of the div. So now that we have this information, what do we do about it? We need this in order to control the styling of the overlay. So if I scroll down to this is the twin overlay. We need to add some style in order to make this reactive. And we can actually do this without using any state, which is super nice because now we're not re-rendering anything. Nothing on this component will re-render. We need to have an insert mask. I'm just going to copy the code that I've already written and then I will explain it. Like this. We're using a radial gradient, which is a gradient that is in a circular format, and we're using that in order to mask our component. So our component will be by default invisible. Not all browsers will support this out of the box, so we also need to use the WebKit version of this. And then we are gonna make it per default, then we're gonna make it transparent, so you cannot see it. So the masking effect will make it so that we can see the overlay at this particular position. So I've gone ahead and then I've defined these CSS variables. We got the X from before up here, and we have the Y, and the opacity will just be set to 1 whenever we're ready. When are we ready? We're ready when our mouse enters the browser, and then our event listener will trigger. So what we can do here actually is to take our document target and then set an attribute for this. So we're gonna set the style attribute, which essentially goes in and then changes the CSS on it. And we are defining two variables, X and Y, and also define the opacity. By default, it will be 0 on first render. When our mouse goes over our document, we want this opacity to be 1, meaning we will be able to see it. And what the thing we will be able to see will be the radial gradient, like the mask that we put on. So I actually also need to input or add opacity, set that to 1. Cool, and we've got a semicolon. That's why I didn't wait. All right, but now that it works, that is essentially what we need to do.